Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience.
Though, y'all might remember when the so-called woke brigade tried to push the term as a shiny new label for people from, only for the actual community to collectively chuckle, shrug, and toss it straight into the reject bin. Well, guess what? And her squad are still clinging to that term like it's some kind of vintage Beanie Baby, even though they've been trying to quietly erase the fact they ever championed it. But isn't buying that revisionist fairy tale. On his show, he went full throttle on just how absurd the whole thing is. So, smash that subscribe button and buckle up. We're diving right in.
Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
And hashtag X20 kicks things off by giving leaders a reality check they never asked for but definitely needed. He points out how the guy they were so sure didn't stand a chance managed to snatch some of their precious seats. Heading into the election, Democrats were patting themselves on the back, sipping lattes, and treating victory like it was already in the bag. But plot twist, voters weren't following that script. Many had already decided to back Trump, largely because their so-called champions in office hadn't actually stood up for the people who put them there. Turns out, neglecting your base while chasing identity politics and virtue signaling points isn't exactly a winning strategy. Who could have guessed?
Their message to you was, I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard. Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales.
Talk about political genius. Ignore your actual voters and pander to a group that doesn't even have a say. Then, as if that wasn't enough, they sprinkled on some woke fairy dust by pushing the term, forcing a label that voters overwhelmingly rejected. Polls showed eye rolls, but Democrats clung to it like gospel, thinking condescension was their golden ticket. Spoiler, it wasn't. Instead, they alienated the very people they needed, handing a political win he didn't even have to fight for.
Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
And hashtag X20 has built her brand on defending every woke trend imaginable, convinced that tossing out progressive buzzwords will keep her base hypnotized. So naturally, she's rushing to defend the term, even though the community largely rejects it. The irony? She markets herself as a gritty warrior of the people, but her upbringing was far removed from that struggle. Heritage alone doesn't equal culture, and on that front, she often comes off more performative than authentically Latino. No wonder her pandering falls flat.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
What the so-called woke mob won't admit is that cutting advanced courses, where many students excel, doesn't create equity, it erases excellence. By watering down standards, they remove any incentive to strive. Why push harder if effort earns the same reward as doing the bare minimum? This drags everyone down, leaving fewer role models, fewer benchmarks, and less drive for greatness. It's not fairness. It's sabotage, and every student pays the price.
If you're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher, yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
There's no real way to measure the damage woke ideals are inflicting on our education system, and on the future leaders will one day depend on. The S grip may be slipping, but the educational wreckage they left behind still lingers. Classrooms today reflect the fallout. Students are less sharp, less competitive, and less disciplined than past generations. Why? Because these so-called reforms didn't lift anyone up. They lowered the bar, slapped an equity label on it, and called it progress. The result is a generation less prepared, less ambitious, and less capable of critical thinking. Education was meant to be the great equalizer. Under woke management, it's becoming a great dumbing down, and that's not just failure, it's sabotage.
President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer.
Yeah, another reason people are fed up with is their obsession with canceling student loan debt. It sounds compassionate, but it's really just vote buying wrapped in moral posturing. Students took those loans knowing the cost, and most can work to repay them. That's how responsibility works. Paying off debt builds discipline and character, but instead of reinforcing that, Democrats push handouts and feed entitlement, teaching young people that accountability is optional. That's not leadership. It's pandering, and voters are starting to see through it.
Universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only if you identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
That's turned pandering to the community into their default political strategy, as if they're the only group in facing real struggles. Every speech and policy rollout seems aimed solely at winning that one block. But in doing so, they sidelined everyone else. Straight men and women working to get by, and other racial and cultural groups who felt ignored. The message was clear. You don't matter as much. Politics isn't a one-group sport, and while chasing applause from one slice of the electorate, they alienated countless others. The ballot box made that clear. Pandering isn't governing.
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh.
And hashtag X20 treats weed like a religion, so imagines delight now that, of all people, are pushing for national legalization, thanks to. The irony is rich. The party he's roasted for years might deliver the green dream he's begged to act on. If the GOP pulls it off, Maher could face an identity crisis, stick with his talk no action liberals, or admit the Republicans actually got it done. And if we goes national under Trump, don't be shocked if Maher starts eyeing red.
Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience.
At the end of the day, it is digging its own grave with policies that insult voters' intelligence, pander to niche groups, and lower standards. From pushing on communities that rejected it to canceling debt meant to teach discipline, they've shown their priorities aren't with everyday Americans. Meanwhile, they've seized the moment, even outflanking them on marijuana legalization, something liberals should have led on years ago. Voters are done with hypocrisy, virtue signaling, and empty promises. And come election day, that frustration will speak louder than any slogan.